Hi, I'm Joshua Hayward. Thanks for joining me in the video. Uh, this is another edition of Straight from the Source, which is an astrological update meant as a complimentary piece to my newsletter on our website, www.dynamicmindcreativeheart.com. The subject today is the upcoming square of the planet Uranus to the planet Pluto. This is the second exact square, second of 7 exact squares from these two planets. This is the aspect or the configuration on a planetary level in the heavens that are defining our times these days, defining our movement into the next paradigm, into the next age, the defining moments of the 21st century, certainly of this part of the century. And why? Well, it has to do with these two planets beginning a relationship, or at least we can look at it right now as that was maybe a beginning for the current relationship that's happening now. The exact conjunctions of Uranus to Pluto in the 60s and the mid-60s, and the changes, the movement, touching into the age of Aquarius, all the societal changes that a lot of younger folks weren't around to witness, but you know, the times that produced rock music and the Beatles and communes and protests and things like that. There's some real different thinking about spirituality, about diets, all that kind of deal. These two planets have moved into their next significant aspect since the 60s, and they're moving to a 90-degree square to each other. And of course, that took a long time to happen, but now we're in the midst of that. So the two planets that cause change in societal approaches to life, approaches to the way we look at ourselves, the way we look at life, the way we deal with each other in society, and maybe the difference in how we seek significance in our lives and meaning in our lives. We're up for another big change here, which has already begun to present itself. The first square was last June in 2012. The second is on the 19th, and that is, in this case, making it somewhat unique and different from the other squares, the exact station of Pluto right at 6 degrees 57 minutes of Capricorn as the exact square happens to Uranus at 6 degrees 57 minutes of Aries. So this is a very intense second square, and it's you know, it's I can't tell you or underemphasize the importance of this earth-shaking, maybe literally, type of transit that we're up for here late in September. The significance is very enormous, and don't be surprised by anything that happens, and don't believe the typical media explanations of any of the events that are happening. Try to filter it through your own consciousness and your own awareness, and hopefully some of the things that I'll be saying today can help you with your own interpretation of the events and help you to make choices in life, your life choices, to take you through this transition of times, this bridge into the age of Aquarius from the age of Pisces, which is really becoming more and more difficult to navigate. Okay, just to give you a little bit of background. Yes, the square is happening, and just a little astrological information. The whole nature of a stationing planet. It's as if it's going retrograde or direct, changing direction. Uh, it doesn't really change its direction around the sun from our perspective on Earth. It actually moves in a different motion. When those stations by the outer planets happen, it intensifies energy times 10 at least. And so when you have this station exactly in the exact square of this definitive astrological configuration or aspect that we will have early in the 21st century, once again, difficult to underemphasize the importance of what's going on here, or the dramatic turn of events that could actually take place, because we are moving at warp speed from one way of looking at life to another way of not only looking at life but experiencing life. So there's no two ways of looking about it. This can really be a very violent type of clashing, of interdimensional clashing, and a clashing of ideologies and a clashing of ideologies and of economy. Okay, usually ideology is used as a way of creating situations that really pertain as much to economy as anything else. And situations meaning wars, conflagrations, military maneuvers, military actions, however the powers that be want to paint it. With Pluto ruling the underworld, what's happening here is that, and it rules evolution and growth on huge levels. Uranus ruling earthquakes and change and lightning bolts, and the change from the status quo has to do with freedom and Aquarian type of things. So you get these two type of planets that are really significantly in this tight geometrical configuration to each other. It speaks of some powerful things. You put the station in there, and so the underworld's opening up. It's as if we're opening to our lives and life on the planet itself from a subconscious or unconscious level, and looking in, and the mysteries are coming up to reveal themselves, to be transformed. We're getting to look in almost directly at the quantum field, the field of pure potential. Those inner realms are from where we are able to access source energy. So source energy is opening up. Something's opening up like a geyser, ready to burst forth and to spew out some real positive creative energy. We're learning something about those inner realms to allow that stuff to come up through, and so we can use our causal energy. Okay, this is really important, so we can do what? We can be free. All right, Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn has to do with the status quo. Business, government, even religion, anything that lays down the structure of the status quo of society. Uranus, once again, being, in sign of Aries. It's about change and freedom. About what? Aries is I am. So this is the freedom of the individual to express him or herself creatively, and to create a new freedom, to move into the new paradigm, which is in fact a new paradigm, which is consciously creating. Consciously creating is that bridge to knowingness. You will notice that the status quo as we have it is really about us not knowing and not being able to find out the mysteries, and having the occult air quotes, and weird alternative spiritualities and astrology, tarot, clairvoyance, all of these things where we can find our power. It's denying access to all of that. So we don't really know who we are. And so our limitations have to do with not just those psychic things, but all kinds of things that we might, paths that we might take towards having personal power of discernment so we can get in touch with that creative energy flowing through us. So the status quo has been preventing a lot of that stuff from happening, and now this wellspring of energy wants to spout forth, and we are going to be expressing ourselves creatively and spiritually, and there's no stopping that now. And this is a big turning point. Don't think that these events of September 18th and 19th, right in there, that this doesn't mark a major turning point, almost as big as the winter solstice. It leads us and moves us, siphons us, helps us just get our energy flowing into those energies of the solstice coming up in 2012 in the winter here, December 21st. Okay, so the shadow side of the status quo keeps us from our power. And since that imbalance of energy is getting ready to shift and change, so we can move into the different paradigm, the creative paradigm, don't think that there's not going to be a rough ride in some way. So I see the transits to the United States chart really look great in terms of foreign relations. Pluto opposite the seventh house being relationship, Jupiter, and Uranus from that Pluto-Uranus square, Uranus squaring Jupiter, forming that a T-square there, to the Jupiter, the seventh house Jupiter of the United States. Also, the wounded healer trining the United States Jupiter, and Jupiter by transit moving into the seventh house of the United States, transiting that. So lots of opportunity as Saturn returned for the United States. We've come out of one of many, many Saturn returns for a big shifting. And so when I'm talking about violence, I think that it's not really on the homeland or on U.S. soil, but I think that there's going to be violence with our neighbors. Now, why, if we have such good transits for relationships? Well, another transit that's happening is Uranus trine the destiny point, the north node, 6 degrees of Leo at the 8th house of the United States. That's a thing about moving forward, moving agendas forward. The 8th house can be seen to mean resources and also war. It would be somewhat the house of war. That's how I see it in the Plutonian sense of the 8th house. So the United States doesn't be nice to people unless it's getting something out of it. And usually the United States advances its own agenda. So what I'm seeing is that there could be some sort of military action. There could be some sort of invasion. There could be, or at least things are going to mobilize and begin happening so the shadow side can make itself manifest in our relationships with probably the Middle East, I would think. You know, you start looking at all the revolutions that are happening there. There's some real intense energy with all of these countries, Syria, Libya, Egypt, Iran, not to mention Afghanistan and Iraq. Okay, so these openings in in relationships for the United States could see that as an opportunity for advancing its own agenda, which obviously has to do with domination, it has to do with resources, it has to do with oil. Um, So this is what I see happening, and I wrote the article on September 11th. This is now the 13th as I record this. Uh, I wrote the article before the attack on the embassy, and where the ambassador Chris Stevens was killed, and now there's another embassy that has also been attacked. And oh, need I go on with all of this thing? This could be. Don't believe what you're being told about that. You know, there was supposedly this anti-Islam video and a reaction to that, but there could be they could have used that as an excuse and having planned this even beforehand. But it's really interesting, though, that this could totally be a setup, and there could be more things. This has happened in the Pluto stations. You can look at them as 10 days to 2 weeks beforehand. They're really intensifying and they're beginning, and you can sense that these things are coming together now. I predict that there's going to be more violence, more demonstrations, and probably some aggressive action around that to advance agenda. If I'm wrong about that, I would be glad. But what I really want to say is that if this stuff does happen, it can be seen as a prelude and awakening to the changes that we really need to relate to one another on this planet. So the way I see things for individuals right now is that Uranus is in Aries. It is about I am. We need to look inside ourselves and to really admit to ourselves a lot of the limiting beliefs that we have and to release them and to really see what our souls truly want and begin to move to that and to not be as influenced by external phenomena, external circumstances, and not be reacting to that, just seeing it for what it is, coming into more consciousness and moving on with what we really need to do. It doesn't matter who is president in terms of what we're really doing in our lives. They want you to think that this is really determinate that in our lives, and that is so important to us. Well, I'm not saying not to vote, but it's like this whole thing is an exercise in futility. This election, this presidential election, all of this stuff is that we need to look beyond the government for what we need to do in our own lives. And this is me editorializing on things, but if we're going to be free on individual levels, we need to move beyond the government dictating our limitations and reflecting our own fears to be free back to us, and then just continually going along with this kind of thing. Anyway, I'll be glad when the election year is over, and this is, really getting pretty tiresome. Certainly make your own choices. This is just information to stimulate some creative processes for you. We're never going to be going back. After these transits, we're not going back to the way, we can't fix it and make life go back to where it was. What we can do is in the now, become more aware, become more loving, have our relationships based on love of self, inner love projecting out, rather than projecting out desires and trying to get our needs met and fulfilled through controlling other people and getting them in relationships to do what we want. that kind of thing. The personal relationships, we've been learning a lot about that with Saturn going through Libra. That's ending. Saturn's moving into, very soon, into the sign of Scorpio. I'll be following up with a piece about that and some newsletter stuff about that, because that's another thing that's going to be very effective, or something that we're going to have to work with as we go through these Pluto-Uranus squares. It's going to be another big factor, shall we say. Okay. Anyway, during the course of November and December, there's going to be some really intense transits, some eclipses, some planet stationing, and of course the winter solstice on the 21st. And between now and then, I'll try to get as much information out to you as I can to promote awareness and to promote good creative choices before that, and with newsletters, with my blog, and with these videos here on YouTube. And I want to thank YouTube for being there and allowing people like myself to get out there and be seen and be heard. And anyway, thank you for joining me on this video, and I really hope you can make the best of these times. Navigate them with love, with self-awareness, with consciousness, with peace in your heart, and a willingness to let that peace emanate outward, and with the power to know that we can be whoever we are, whoever we need to be, our true selves. Namaste. Be well.